बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम, अस्सलाम वालेकुम। आप देख रहे हैं न्यूज़ टुडे विद तंजीला मज़हर। प्रोग्राम में आपको खुशामदीद कहेंगे। ब्रॉडशीट के CEO कावे मौसवी की जो बातें हैं, जो इंकशाफात उन्होंने किए हैं, पाकिस्तान से दौलत किसने लूटी और वो लूटी हुई दौलत पाकिस्तान में वापस क्यों नहीं आ सकी। सारे ताने बाने जाके मुशर्रफ हुकूमत से मिलते हैं, लेकिन निज़ाम अब तक वही चल रहा है। वो कहते हैं कि नैब पाकिस्तान के अवाम को बेवकूफ़ बना रहा है। क्या नैब पाकिस्तान की हुकूमत को भी बेवकूफ़ बना रहा है? क्योंकि नैब जो केसेस करता है, पाकिस्तान की हुकूमत बहुत दावे बुलंदोबांग करते हुए उन तमाम केसेस को ओन भी करती है। तो आज हम इन तमाम चीज़ों के हवाले से कावे मौसवी साहब से ही बात करेंगे कि इमरान खान की हुकूमत की तरफ से उनसे किसने रब्ता किया। जो साहब उनसे मिले उनको हुकूमत डिसोन करती है। वो कहते हैं हमें नहीं पता कि कौन से जनरल मलिक हैं। और फिर नवाज शरीफ की तरफ से जो लोग उनको मिले, पाकिस्तान मुस्लिम लीग नवाज की जमात भी उस चीज़ को डिसोन कर चुकी है कि वो नवाज लीग के कहने पे या नवाज लीग की नुमाइंदगी करने के लिए वो साहब वहाँ पर नहीं गए थे। बात करेंगे हम कावे मौसवी साहब से, जो कि CEO हैं ब्रॉडशीट के। थैंक यू सो मच कावे मौसवी for joining us today. You know, you have become very famous in Pakistan. I must tell you this.
Well, I hope I've been able to be of service in the process. One can become famous for the wrong reasons. I hope in this instance for the right reason, to serve the people of Pakistan.
Yes, if we could, see any logical conclusions to the revelation you have made recently. But I would like to start our discussion from one very basic question. What was the mandate which were given to you when you signed your contract in Musharraf regime?
Unexplained wealth of members of the Pakistani elite ruling class establishment and who had been salting their money abroad. But we were aware that as soon as they would become aware of our investigation, they would sell and send money back to Pakistan. So we insisted that if we found money abroad and it could be traced back to Pakistan, that was also to be investigated. So just because the money was back in Pakistan, it was not going to be removed from the reach of our investigation. So the mandate was an anti-corruption mandate.
Okay. Were you assigned to suggest action against those money trails which you were trying to investigate?
Yes, we were given the mandate to find, freeze, and repatriate funds back to Pakistan, to the Pakistani people through their governing institutions, which we took at the time to be serious about fighting corruption, and very soon we discovered they were not serious.
So you have told Pakistani media and international media as well that you compiled a list of 200 Pakistanis who had stolen wealth in the accounts abroad. Did you compile that list with your own sources, or any tips were also shared by the Pakistani government, then government rather?
No, they began to give us a list which was exclusively Nawaz Sharif. When we refused it, we said no. If it's good, we are not going to be part of a witch hunt, and this investigation must either be about corruption, which must its remit must encompass all those people who have taken illicit wealth out of Pakistan, or else we're not going to get involved. And it was agreed, to their lasting credit, they agreed initially that they would expand the remit, and the list was to include the previous governments and not just the Nawaz Sharif government, because we suspected this might become a witch hunt, a political witch hunt, which I'm bound to say with my profound regret that it turned out to be like that in the end.
Yes, but I really want to understand, why did you do that? Like, why Broadsheet did that they will not be part of any witch hunt? As I can see that you were assisting the government and you could have chosen otherwise.
Well, I just gave you the reason. We were not willing to be. I'm a human rights lawyer, and I was conducting a human rights seminar at Oxford University. I was not going to become part of an illegitimate effort at political victimization of the opponents of the government, masquerading as an anti-corruption drive, which unfortunately now became very, very soon. That's the reason.
So what intentions were shared with you when you were approached, and who approached you? If we ask precisely, you were approached, or rather you offered your services, how this worked?
We were approached. We were approached by the government of Pakistan, and we said in the new circumstances, perhaps they're serious. And I've been running a set of seminars, and I've been at least for a decade and a half involved in anti-corruption efforts. Prior to that, the biggest anti-corruption exposure that I was involved in was in Mexico a decade before I was approached by the government of Pakistan. And that has a very serious international implications. It led to congressional investigations in the United States. It led to my testimony before the U.S. authorities. It led to arrests in Mexico eventually, the resignation of the relevant minister, and the imprisonment of the brother of the president of Mexico. So we had quite a considerable reputation and a track record, and that's why the government of Pakistan approached us.
So did you, were you aware of the political dynamics of Pakistan at that time? Because, you know, Musharraf was a dictator. He just had actually overthrown democracy when he was trying to approach you. Did you consider that?
I do not think that Pakistan had a democracy. It was a sham led by oligarchs and thieves, and the record shows that. Democracy is about people having the freedom to choose. The overwhelming majority of the people of Pakistan did not have the freedom to choose. The elections in Pakistan I've observed, I've read reports, I have followed and studied in great detail. Those are not what I call democratic elections. Democratic elections are about when people are not beholden to their landlords, when people are not beholden to their masters, when people do not hand over their IDs and electoral registration to political mafias. These are not elections. Elections are when governments are made accountable. Occasionally, the military actually are an extremely positive force, as they were in South Korea, as they were in Taiwan, and in many other countries. They have created solid democracies in those countries, which without the intervention of the military, those countries would not have been democracies today. General MacArthur was not elected by anyone in Japan, and yet he turned Japan into a solid democracy. Yeah. The occupation forces in Germany were military powers, and they were not democratic elected.
But we have not been very lucky. But you have said that initially the processes and procedures were very smooth, and like suddenly what happened? Why your contract was terminated, and was it a unilateral action, or you were informed beforehand before they actually terminated the contract?
No, we could see that it was going the wrong way. I mean, when General Amjad resigned and then Farooq Adam Khan was sacked, well, he resigned too because and I spoke to, and it was quite obvious they couldn't do their work. And then fast forward a few years before in the trial in London, and General Amjad testified. He said he was prevented from doing his own work. Another head of NAB, head of NAB, wrote his autobiography, and he sent it to me, and it's quite clear in there that he was prevented from doing his work. And there were actually ministers who were saying, but if a minister is not allowed to make money in public office, how is he supposed to live? I mean, that's the political culture of this fake democracy that is pretending that that was a democracy. Look, if you look at I see that again, documents are being leaked to the press again, and you will see that on the 1st of June 2001, that is less than 1 year. Note the date, please. Less than 1 year after our contract was executed, we've been asked formally not to investigate Nawaz Sharif anymore, because an agreement was made with him and he was packed off to Saudi Arabia. And it was if we ever needed a sign that this is not a serious investigation, that was it. And then there were other cases in which they asked us to stop investigating targets.
Yes, you told this earlier that there were certain individuals who you were asked to exclude them from the investigation. Can you just tell us that were they politicians only, or any other officials of the establishment and maybe from the business community and ruling elite?
Overwhelmingly politicians, and politicians who cut deals with the Musharraf government. One of them left the Pakistan People's Party and set up Pakistan People's Party Patriot. You know who I'm talking about, Mr. Sherpa. And yes, he was immediately taken off the list, and then the account that we'd frozen was unfrozen. The stolen money was given back to him, and very soon after that he became a Home Minister of Pakistan. Do I need to tell you any more about that? I mean, it became an absurd, it became a charade. So your earlier question, did we have notice? We had plenty of indications that this is not going where it's supposed to go.
Yeah. So it was a contract on a commission base. Correct me if I'm right or wrong.
It was a contract which we put up the money for. We took the entirety of the risk because we were so certain we'd be able to find this money, and if we found it and if we were successful, we would be paid 20%. As it was, they cheated us even on that.
Okay, so when public discourse start, usually people ask a lot of questions. So I've been hearing the commentary on your revelation and the timing of all this whatever is happening in Pakistan regarding your revelation. So people have been asking about your intentions to share these details, where you are not telling the names and not the precise details, but you are telling Pakistani nation that was a list of 200 people who had stolen their money, and government was not really serious to bring that money back.
That is correct. The government was not serious. Initially, they gave us the impression they were serious, and the biggest impression they gave us, the biggest indication that they were serious, was when they agreed that they would not limit the investigation to the Sharif government and the Sharif family and their alter egos and the coterie around them. When we saw that, that was a clear sign to us that they meant to be serious. But those signs were, I'm afraid, proved to be pretty illusory soon after that.
So is there any other motive to share these details other than you just try to get your commission, which was actually, you have said that you were defrauded by the NAB and government of Pakistan?
Well, we were defrauded by NAB. We didn't say that. The judge said that. Sir Anthony Evans said that. And once the judgment is leaked, and I'm sure it will be, we certainly haven't leaked anything on our side. And if people are saying that information is coming out in dribs and drabs, it's because the government of Pakistan or NAB or officials have been leaking these over the years selectively in order to put a spin on them. We haven't leaked anything because we are bound by confidentiality. You see, we were trying to introduce a culture of law and the rule of law there. Unfortunately, we found that our experience did not confirm that the desire to be bound by law. What we have disclosed is based on the material that's been leaked, and we've been happy to engage in comment on it. But
okay,
I'm not.
So let me take a quick break. Mr. Kaveh Mousavi is with us. He is CEO Broadsheet, और हम उनसे बात अपनी जारी रखेंगे. एक ब्रेक ले रहे हैं, ब्रेक के बाद वापस आते हैं. Stay with us. Welcome back to News Today with Tanzeela Mazhar. We are talking to Mr. Kaveh Mousavi, CEO Broadsheet. Mr. Mousavi, the financial damages which you have claimed through courts. Is there any motive that is why you are sharing these details to Pakistani nation and media across the world?
I've said quite clearly we are bound by confidentiality, and we are willing to discuss the issues that have come out. Now, arbitrations are confidential by law. However, Pakistan decided to appeal the decision of Sir Anthony Evans to the Court of Appeal, and they lost. Now, court proceedings are by definition not confidential because we don't have kangaroo courts and secret courts in Britain. And so the matters that were discussed in court, I'm free and at liberty to discuss. But I have offered to the government of Pakistan a release. That is to say, if they wish to open up the discussion fully, and of course the challenge is if they wish to put the judgment of Sir Anthony Evans in front of the Pakistani nation, they have my permission to do so. So once they do that, we'll have an even more expansive discussion.
So why would you want to that government of Pakistan should release that judgment?
I think it would show who is speaking the truth. Well, I mean, obviously the events show that who's speaking the truth, because by definition, everybody knows that we won the court action. Everybody knows that Pakistan not only lost that action, but they lost the appeal as well. And everybody knows that the court ordered that Pakistani government assets be seized and given to us for the damage that the conspiracy to defraud, which is the words that the judgment says, the conspiracy to defraud us and the conspiracy to inflict the economic damage on broadsheet would be satisfied. Now, that should be quite enough for anyone. They say one word suffices the intelligence, but this is more than one word. It's a judgment. The conclusions of it have already come out and they can see. So why would I want to share it? Is because the more information, the better. The truth is usually revealed by more information, not by less information. It's censorship that usually suppresses the truth. And the whole purpose of censorship is to suppress. I'm very keen to put on the record for the people of Pakistan, who are my true masters, with my true employers, to know exactly what happened.
So I was listening to Shahzad Akbar, who is heading the accountability process in Pakistan. You have been alleging that they were trying to spin the truth, but he said that you wanted a new contract. So you are doing all this for a new contract?
I'm sorry, the word skimmed were used by him, not by me.
Okay.
And the record shows. And what does that say? I put it to you to ask a question. What does it say about the credibility, veracity, respect for law of a minister who refers to a court order, a court judgment as skimming? His courts might be that. The courts in England are not like that. The man doesn't even understand what a court judgment means. A court judgment means what you're entitled to because the damage that you have suffered as a result of the conspiracy to defraud you that has taken place by the government of Pakistan. If that's skimming, then I am, Julius Caesar.
So he also said that when he was asked by our colleagues in our media that whether you shared any details about that $1 billion account, he said no, you didn't show any evidence, you just wanted to sign a new contract. So he was not really sure that whether you have any substantial evidence regarding that account or not. What is your take on that?
Well, did he ask me? He showed absolutely no interest. If I come to you and say, I found money that was left for you by your great-grandfather, would you show some interest in asking the question about that, especially if my reputation was someone who was finding stolen assets? At least you would ask a question, do you know who my grandfather was? You would ask me the question, where? He didn't even ask that. He showed no interest at all. We put it on the record, we put it in writing. It's in the letter that our lawyers wrote to Alan Overy, the lawyers of government of Pakistan, who received a very, very large substantial fees from the government of Pakistan. What would the government do? If this man was serious, the first thing he would have done was immediately write back and say, okay, let's get a discussion. Is there such a letter? Of course not. They've never shown any interest at all. And when I saw him, he didn't show any interest, just as he showed no interest in finding out who was the man who tried to come and suborn me and shake me down for a commission, for give us a new contract. Not whatsoever. His only interest was, I'm buying a carpet from you, give me a discount. That's what it was. So I don't take this fool seriously, and I didn't think you should take him seriously. Anyone who refers to a court judgment as skimming is not a person who merits being taken seriously. So,
Mr. Mousavi, who is Mr. Zafar? Was he representing you when he was holding, high-level meetings in Pakistan, including the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan? Because Shahzad Akbar is suggesting that they had no clue that you two are connected, and by any means he was aware of any connections between you and Mr. Zafar.
Well, I mean, Zafar Ali, I didn't know him from Adam. Just as I've never heard of you. It's the first time we're having a conversation. He turned up through a very good, close, trusted friend, and he said he had top-level connections with the government of Pakistan and that he could mediate the issue, settle it. And I said, I'm happy to talk to anyone if they got it. And Shahzad Akbar confirmed to me that Zafar Ali had seen him. So I said, why did you see him? He said, because he came introduced by a very, very powerful person that I could not say no to. You better ask him that question, not me. I didn't know Zafar Ali from Adam.
But Zafar Ali sent them a contract almost like the contract you had earlier with the government. Do you think that he was playing both sides, or who he was? Because you run an investigation agency, you must have, dug into all this account.
As I said, I can only repeat what I said before. I didn't know Zafar Ali from Adam, what he was doing, what games he was playing, if indeed he was playing a game. You better ask him that. I'm not in a position to comment on that because I genuinely don't know.
So you are saying that the current government didn't show any interest in the list you had already offered to the state of Pakistan, whosoever was in the government. So you must have, because you said that you were aware of the political dynamics and you must have heard about the rhetoric of accountability by the PTI, by the Imran Khan. Were you surprised by this lack of interest?
By the lack of interest shown by
Shahzad Akbar?
By NAB, yes. I am not even sure if Imran Khan even heard about this stuff because the material that reaches the Prime Minister goes through hundreds of filters, and the crooks in the middle, they know how to filter things out. And then I've spoken to government ministers before, and I do know that they are not even aware of issues that are supposed to be in their remit. So I am not going to, at this stage, it's far too early for me to suggest that Imran knew anything about this. So I just don't know.
So you met two people, one representing Nawaz Sharif and one person representing NAB, or maybe he just said that he is meeting you on behalf of the government. Did you verify their identities before agreeing to meet them? Because that has opened up a new Pandora box, because Shahzad Akbar said categorically that there were nobody authorized from the NAB or from the government of Pakistan to meet you.
Well, I have no way of knowing whether he's saying the truth or not. All I know is I took the standard precautions, and the standard precautions are show me some credentials. In the case of the man who came to see me from Nawaz Sharif group, well, his credentials I've spoken about at least 24 times on television in Pakistan, so yes. I don't think I need to go through that. And the other chap, the minute I realized he's trying to shake me down, regardless of his credentials, I walked away, and I told the waiter that he will pay his own bill for the coffee and I'll pay mine. Thank you very much, goodbye.
But you said that you informed this right away to the government of Pakistan. Who did you inform actually?
Pakistan government lawyers in London immediately.
So did they get back to you or suggesting any actions, or maybe sharing any further details on that?
They took no action whatsoever, which by the time we'd reached the stage, it didn't surprise me. I wish I had written directly to the Prime Minister. I wish I'd pick up the phone to Imran and told him that myself. But we live and learn. But I respected the protocols. Imran is running through a minefield. He's good at running at the cricket pitch, but the political minefield of Pakistan is clearly a bit more difficult. So, but my regret is I should have picked up the telephone to him and said to him that these events are taking place, and are you being informed of them? No, we stuck to protocol, which was to let the government lawyers know, and nothing came back.
Okay, Mr. Mousavi, I'll take a quick break on this point and we will continue our conversation from here. ब्रेक ले रहे हैं जी, हमारे साथ रहिए, ब्रेक के बाद वापस आते हैं. जी, प्रोग्राम में एक बार फिर आपको खुशामदीद कहेंगे. हम बात कर रहे हैं ब्रॉडशीट के CEO कावे मौसवी साहब से. ही इज़ विद अस. वर यू सरप्राइज्ड एज वेल, बिकॉज in these 2 decades Pakistan has been facing a whole lot of accountability mantra, and political parties and leaders have been blaming other parties for political victimization and witch hunting. So how did you see all this?
Frankly, nothing surprises me in Pakistan when it comes to thievery by the establishment. When I have the first head of NAB, General Amjad, say in court openly that the establishment has plundered the country. And when a minister tells me that the establishment has gang raped the country, frankly, nothing surprises me. I am pleasantly surprised, however, that I see signs that Imran is serious about fighting corruption. I'll tell you one sign, one telltale symptom you see of corrupt governments not interested in going after stolen wealth is that they usually attack the whistleblower, and they usually attack the person who's brought the information to them. I've had long and bitter and painful experience with many governments where I have exposed corruption and I've been the target of the attack. I confess it's a breath of fresh air that I have had no attacks from the government of Pakistan. I mean, I'm going to ignore this fool, Shahzad Akbar, because a fool who comes and sees me and is interested in trying to get a discount of $2 million when I put $1 billion in front of him that's stolen, and he shows no interest. And a fool who shows no interest in investigating an attempt to shake me down for 50% of whatever commission we are going to get if we find $1 billion or two. I mean, I'm not going to take him as a serious person.
But he is very close to Prime Minister. He's heading the accountability narrative of Prime Minister in Pakistan. How can you disassociate both the gentlemen?
Well, as I said, the Prime Minister, unfortunately, only is as good as what he hears and what he's told. And there are dozens of filters of information that doesn't get to him. That's why I am talking very openly within the confines of the law, insofar as it's possible, about this on open television. And I'm certain, in fact, I know that the Prime Minister is hearing things that he's never heard from officials who are supposed to feed him the information. So, yeah, that's the explanation.
So, but the General Malik, whosoever he was, he met you in 2018 when Prime Minister was heading the government. Imran Khan was already here in Islamabad as Prime Minister of Pakistan. Did you suspect later on that maybe this gentleman was not really representing the government of Pakistan? Maybe he was trying to be someone else? He was pretending?
Well, how can I answer that beyond saying I asked for credentials and he produced all sorts of documents, including NAB documents, and the documents that only be available to someone who's a senior official, or at least someone who had serious influence in the accountability process. And the conversation was serious. We were discussing the procedures that would be adopted. I was adamant that the protocols must be much more serious and rigorous, so that if we came close to money, the target wouldn't be tipped off, as it was tipped off again and again by NAB during the early days of Musharraf's government. Not during Amjad's time and Farooq Adam Khan's time, I confess. The matters were going swimmingly well at that point. But, these protocols we're discussing. So we were intensely in the conversation until the issue of asking me for a 50% of what we were going to make. And I just was so shocked. And I immediately ended the conversation at that point and called the waiter and said, I'm leaving and I'm paying my own bill, and go on. So the credentials, did I investigate? Well, what would you do if somebody calls you and tells you, I am representing so-and-so and I will, let's have a meeting? You say, yes, and the first thing you say, well, let's look at your credentials. And the excuse was, well, you realize that, the military and the intelligence services had been investigating Mr. Nawaz Sharif, and, there are some secrets here. And if you don't mind, we won't go too much into my background. I said, yeah, I respect that. If the Supreme Court was willing to accept that ISI were involved in investigations, who am I to second guess the Supreme Court? The highest judicial authority of Pakistan has decided that this is a bona fide process, and so I'm happy to go along with that. And we did happily go along with that until I discovered that no, possibly I am faced here with an attempt to shake me down, and I brought the discussion to an end immediately.
Okay, so he showed you some contract, and according to what I understood from Shahzad Akbar's TV interviews, that that contract was sent to Pakistani government, precisely maybe to the NAB, from Zafar Ali.
Well, we were we were told that they invited a new contract, and we said, well, the terms of it can more or less be as before, and they were more or less as before, except we tightened it up to include tighter protocols. That's all.
Okay, so last few questions which I want to ask you. You have been saying on your like I have heard few of interviews you have given to Pakistani journalists that NAB is not serious and NAB is trying to fool Pakistani nation and maybe the government as well. Why did you say that?
Well, what do you think? What was the conclusion you would come to when within a year of signing a contract, they ask you to remove from the list of investigation and targets Mr. Nawaz Sharif, who was the Prime Minister, who's the Supreme Court found him to have, what, $830 million or whatever of illicit money? I mean, what would you do? There's the first target is that you're asked to remove, and then very soon after that you find and you see traces, and after that in buckets, you see evidence that they're leaking the information that you are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to get and giving it to them, and they're leaking it to the target. What would you conclude when you find that they're asking you to remove from the target list and unfreeze the account of somebody who's a crook that whose account you have frozen? What would you conclude? NAB was an attempt to fool the people of Pakistan into believing that there was a serious effort at investigating the crooks who have raped the country. That should remain my testimony until I see evidence to the contrary. I may be able to see evidence to the contrary with the new government. I remain optimistic given the signs that I see for emerging from the new government's approach to things. Yes.
So till what time you have been engaged with NAB, like even during your arbitration period, till what time you were closely engaged?
Well, we signed the contract in July 2000, and unlawfully the contract was rescinded on 28th of October 2003. But effectively, our engagement to them come to an end when they started defrauding the people of Pakistan and sabotaging our efforts. It's not my allegation; it's the finding of the judge.
So did you investigate about the looted money of Pakistan after your contract was terminated, or you had only that information which you gathered when the contract was on?
Well, the investigation was live, and we were continuing to get information, and of course we kept that. We didn't pass it on, but when we had intelligence that about $1 billion that we offered it to the government of Pakistan as a gesture of good faith, we had that information after won the award, the court award. Sir Anthony Evans had made his decision, and he had said that they defrauded us. But nevertheless, as a gesture of good faith, we alerted them to this, and you saw what happened. They did precisely nothing.
So, did anyone ask you to remove anybody from the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz from that list of 200 people when they had an agreement with Musharraf government?
Again and again, we were asked to remove people, again and again.
Okay. थैंक यू सो मच मिस्टर कावे मौसवी फॉर टॉकिंग टू अस। आपने गुफ्तगू सुनी जी ब्रॉडशीट के CEO कावे मौसवी साहब की, उनके इंकशाफात पाकिस्तान की लूटी हुई दौलत को वापस लाने के लिए जनरल मुशर्रफ के ज़माने में उनके साथ एक कॉन्ट्रैक्ट हुआ था। उस कॉन्ट्रैक्ट को कैसे तोड़ा गया यूनिलैटरली, और उनको कहा गया कि आप बहुत सारे लोगों के ख़िलाफ़ आप इन्वेस्टिगेशन रोक दें, और जिसमें नवाज़ शरीफ के लोग भी शामिल थे, और इवन नवाज़ शरीफ की ख़ानदान के बारे में जो इन्वेस्टिगेशन हो रही थी उसको भी रोका गया जब नवाज़ शरीफ सऊदी अरब जा रहे थे मुशर्रफ के ज़माने में, और जब उनकी मुशर्रफ के साथ डील हो गई थी। आज के प्रोग्राम से इतना ही। इमरान खान के हवाले से कावे मौसवी की काफ़ी एक्सपेक्टेशंस हैं, वही एक्सपेक्टेशंस जो पाकिस्तान के अवाम को भी हैं, लेकिन नैब जिसकी क्रेडिबिलिटी के ऊपर सुप्रीम कोर्ट, इंटरनेशनल इदारे, सिविल सोसाइटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस और पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज़ बहुत सारे तहफ़्फ़ुज़ात का इजहार कर चुकी हैं, इमरान खान को इन तहफ़्फ़ुज़ात को संजीदगी से सोचना चाहिए और देखना चाहिए कि नैब के अंदर वो कौन से लकूनाज हैं, वो कौन सी कमज़ोरियाँ हैं जिनको दूर किए बगैर पाकिस्तान में एहतसाब का अमल ना तो मजबूत होगा ना शफाफ होगा। अपना ख्याल रखिए। अल्लाह हाफ़िज़।